Right, so it's Friday, it's whatever time you want it to be, baby, and it's Dragonheart. The other Cell's comeback from injury didn't last a full 90 minutes. He got a yellow card in the first half and a second after the break. It was the most calamitous shirt pulling since Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl. The Welsh Government seems to be acknowledging now that they owe us one after we didn't get the funding that all the other English National League teams got. So, hopefully we'll be able to pull in a favour. I reckon that they should make sure that every visiting team has to stay for a fortnight in a bed and breakfast in Akrivaya once they enter the country. There's even talk of Wrexham hosting World Cup games in 2030. I don't know. It was expensive enough given the Wrexham Council Planning Committee and Ivor Williams trailer each to wave the cop stand through. How expensive will diamond encrusted Deadpool DVDs hand delivered by Ryan Reynolds to each of the FIFA Executive Committee be? I'm not convinced. I'm Mark Griffiths, I'm joined today by Chay Long, and we'll be looking back on the Wealdstone game, talking to Carl Tremarco, remembering Juan Ugarte, and picking our favourite all-time Wrexham five-a-side team. So, strap yourself in, it's time for Dragonheart.
I'm Fiacre Kelleher and you're listening to Dragonheart Radio Show.
Yes, so welcome to Dragonheart. I'm Mark Griffiths, and am I going to point in the right direction? That is Chay Long.
Hi Mark, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. All the better for seeing your backdrop this week. That's a sweet historic moment, isn't it?
Oh yeah, not talked about enough. I think the Shrewsbury game before the Boston game. So yeah, an iconic match for everyone who went there, really.
Yeah, for those of you audio listeners, yeah, it's Michael Proctor scoring that winning goal at Shrewsbury, the last game at the Game Edo, and we went and spoiled it all by doing something stupid like winning. So yeah, fantastic. We've got plenty to talk about, even though there's only one game to talk about. It's a bit of a shock, isn't it, to only have one match to reflect back on with this packed schedule we've got. But Wealdstone game, we'll look back on that. That should be pleasant. We'll also be hearing from Carl Tremarco, a really interesting interview on his time at the racecourse. We'll talk about whether his second season, our first in the non-league, was a wasted opportunity to bounce straight back up. We'll also reflect on Juan Ugarte, who, well, this is the anniversary of him scoring 5 goals at Hartlepool. And you've been responding to our shout-out for the ultimate Wrexham five-a-side team. So we'll look at what you picked and tell you what we picked as well. It's a packed agenda, so let's get cracking. After this, we'll be talking about the Wealdstone game.
I'm Jordan Ponticelli and you're listening to the Dragonheart Radio Show.
Right, so only one match to talk about this week, and it was a nice one. Wealdstone. Well, I say it was a nice one. By the end, it was a nice one. At half-time, I think we were feeling very differently about it, weren't we?
Yeah, shall I say it? Shall I say the thing that everyone says?
Oh, God.
Tale of two halves, wasn't it?
Oh!
No, but honestly, I don't think you could, in a game like that, I don't think you could describe it in any other way, could you?
Yeah.
Because I remember being at the ground next to you and everyone around us, well, social distance, of course, we were absolutely livid, weren't we, after the first half? I think it was a pretty poor performance by pretty much everyone on the team. First half, anyway.
I just, I felt a bit of despair at the end of that half. I've got to be honest with you, because it sort of started off okay-ish, but Wealdstone started controlling the ball and keeping the ball in our half. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not comfortable with that, but I think we were trying to knock it over the top for Thomas and Angus, and it wasn't really working, but I thought, all right, well, we can settle into this. They're not threatening us, and then they go and get the goal. And at that point, I just thought for a while, we looked all at sea, and I started thinking, oh boy, this is poor, you know. And as you know, some of the performances lately that people haven't been happy about, I've been a bit more happy about. I've you know, we both, I think, have seen the two sides of those performances, but this one, there was no excuse. I mean, Wealdstone were just in awful form. I don't think they're a particularly good team, if I'm perfectly honest. And they were starting to dictate the terms, and we didn't look to have anything to come back at them. And I really, really started worrying. Although, just at the end of the half, the last 5 minutes, we had a decent spell. And that just lifted me a little bit, but I was still very concerned at half time, though.
Yeah, I was horrendously concerned because I thought, you know, we were playing pretty bad, but we were keeping them at bay, and the goal we conceded was just very sloppy.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know, we just couldn't seem to string a pass together either, could we, in the first half? Durrell looked like he was running around a little bit aimlessly, but yeah, the first half happened. I'd happily forget about that first half, but the second half, we literally looked like a completely different side, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just one last thing on the first half as well, but just to show that contrast. I mean, I think you missed Hall Johnson on the right massively.
Yeah.
And as well, like I say, I mean, in the first half, I mean, Durrell was an interesting call. He'd not started in 10 games. And in that first half, it wasn't working for him. And I was openly saying in the commentary, he might not come out for the second half. But then those things addressed themselves. Durrell, to be fair, came out and had a good second half. And I always like that in a player. You know, you can't get into things properly, so you roll your sleeves up and you get into it. I think, with hindsight, obviously, I think it was wise to keep the same 11, having ripped into them, no doubt, at half time, and told them, go on, show what you're actually about. And the other thing is, I mean, the loss of Hall Johnson is a blow, clearly, but in that spell just before half time, we started to get Tyler French into the game higher up the pitch, and he was massive in the second half. He actually, Hall Johnson's style, had ended up with 2 assists, although very, very varied assists. I mean, the first one is your classic, fantastic drilled cross for Kwame Thomas to score, and the second one was a good long ball down the flank to give Angus something to fight for. But the defender really screwed her up. It's an assist because the defender somehow managed to get underneath a long ball, try to play it 3 times and not actually touch it, which is a fair feat. But again, it showed, I think, at this level, you can force other sides to make mistakes.
Yeah, I think as well, I think Wealdstone were really high getting that first goal, and then coming to the second half, they conceded straight away, and you could just see their heads drop as well, couldn't you?
Yeah.
And it just played right into our hands. I thought Tyler French did a fantastic job covering Reece Hall Johnson. He's a different style of right wing back, isn't he? He's more like because he is a centre back, but he's physical and he's fast. And that, as you said, that low driven cross was a beautiful assist, wasn't it? And it was, I'm not sure if the cameras picked it up, but the passion from him when the goal went in as well was brilliant. He looked elated with the goal. So very, very happy. And we got to talk about the second goal because I thought that was beautifully well worked.
Fantastic, that wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can't remember who it was who said, but somebody was quite near Carl Darlington when we got that corner, and Darlington was calling, or because remember the management team have all got earpieces, so they're all linked together with the analyst up on the gantry, and apparently Darlington was saying, "Get Durrell out of the penalty spot, because we can play that one, the one we've worked on, straight to Luke Young." And then, as he was saying, it had always done it. So on the pitch, the players made a good call there. And yeah, it was beautifully worked. And then, of course, you want a chance like that, frankly, to fall to Luke Young, because from that sort of range, he strikes the ball so cleanly, doesn't he?
Oh, if he has a shot on goal, if it's hitting the target, there's a very, very, you usually have to force a really good save out the keeper, don't you, to stop the goal. And for me, that was an unstoppable shot. And for me, the way it was, the whole goal was worked, for me, was probably the most satisfying goal of the season. Just because that was straight out of the training ground. You could tell that was exactly what they've been working on all week. And then it was just nice for us to be off 2-1 up, just that little bit of breathing room there. And I thought, oh, we're going to win this game. Because honestly, I thought we could have, I was thinking, we could be 2-3 down, because that, in all fairness, after the first half. Because all fairness, their Mendy, is he their right winger?
Yeah.
And who was their centre midfielder who played really well as well? I forgot his name. Anyway,
Well, it's just the memory of an old man here. I'll have a quick look at their team.
I think anyway, yeah, I think he was tearing us to pieces. I was looking at him and I thought, oh, he looked like a good player that I quite like at Wrexham.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought as soon as the third goal went in as well, that was just really satisfying, wasn't it? And it was just, we won. I knew when the third goal, and it was a weird goal, wasn't it? Because the defender should have done a lot better. But we were in control and we were the better side then. And it was just a lot of relief, wasn't it?
Oh, massively. We just looked so different compared to the first half. Not just because, like I say, French was starting to get into the game. Was it Smith, the midfielder?
Yes, yeah. He was having a good game as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't like I said, some elements of our improvements were showing at the end of the first half, but we were just in their half, pressuring them. And like I said before, you put National League teams under pressure and you may just force errors. I wasn't quite sure about this. During the first half, I thought it was noticeable how little we were pressing them in their half. And I wondered why that was. And I wondered if that was a part of the whole, you can't knock the ball over the top if they're sitting in. So you invite them out a bit and then you can knock it over the top of them. Because I just looked at, there were a lot of times when their defenders were moving it around in their own half and our strikers just dropped to the halfway line. There was no interest in pressing them at all. And I thought that was, I'm not stupid. You don't chase the ball every single time. There are periods in games where the defence can pass the ball around, but it didn't look like us taking a breather. It looked like us asking them onto us so we could then knock it in behind them. It looked like to me. Second half, totally different. We just lived in their half and we were putting pressure on them all the time. The number of times we won the ball back in dangerous positions in their half was terrific because we were making them make mistakes. And I was really pleased with that. And of course, we were able to join up with the strikers better, give them better service. And to be fair to Thomas and Angus, I think they're a good pair. And if you give them decent service, they will bring each other in, they'll bring other people in, and we start looking threatening.
Well, another thing I 100% agree, it was very well put. And one thing I'd like to say as well, I think a lot of the fans have criticism keep saying that he can't motivate the players. But for me, after the first half, coming into the second half, they looked so fired up. And it was the same in the Weymouth game as well, wasn't it? So I think it's quite the opposite. I think Dean Keats does a fantastic job on motivating the players at times. I just think it was just so different from the first half. I've never quite seen a game like that. You don't see the games like that very often, do you? Where it's literally the Wrexham look like two completely different sides. But one elephant in the room I'd like to address was that Vassell got sent off.
Yeah.
And we did a good portion of the game with 10 men as well, didn't we? So what's your thoughts on Vassell's first performance back? Were you slightly disappointed, or was the red card disappointing? Or
I felt happy with his performance. I thought the defence had to do well. I was hoping it wouldn't have to against them, but the first half the defence had to work. But the red cards, well, it's funny actually. I see it the opposite way around to Dean Keats, to be honest. I see that Keats is basically saying the first one's a yellow, and the second one isn't really a yellow. The first one, I'm undecided about the first one, I've got to say. He doesn't really seem to make any attempt to play the man. He's sort of caught out, isn't he, by the ball over the top. So it's his mistake in the first place. The ball goes over the top of him, and he's caught out by it. He maybe should have been a bit more aware. There's a player coming in on the diagonal behind him, and then he turns. And I don't know, at first, if I'm being generous, does he sort of not fully realise the bloke's there until it's too late, collides with him, and there's nothing deliberate? Because there's no, I've looked at it a few times, there's no deliberate movement to take him out. But on the other hand, if you're a centre-back, you might be cute in that situation. and just decide, oh, well, I'll not go for him, but my momentum will carry me into him. I'll knock him down anyway. I might not get away with this. So 50-50, probably the ref's right. I feel the second one's definitely yellow. I mean, for me, he's got up the pitch.
Grab on a T-shirt, couldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, generally, grabbing someone's shirt when they're running past you is a yellow. It's not an attempt to play the ball. He's pinged the ball in, trying to link up going forwards, which is good. And I think he's perfectly capable of doing that. We've lost possession. He's now 15 yards into their half, marooned. They got a breakaway on. And so, you know, if he wasn't on the yellow, you'd say he took one for the team there. He's just grabbed the guy and stopped him going past. As he's on the yellow, he should let him go past. Because, you know, what's the worst that can happen? It'll be 3-2. And we're still on top of the game. And we've still got chances to stop them from scoring. So, yeah, to me, if you're on a yellow and you make that challenge, you're off. But I was happy with his performance. I thought he looked, coming back from an injury, I thought he slotted straight in. My only concern is it's a shame he'll miss the Sutton game because that's a proper match.
It's exactly what I was about to say. I said it was worrying, thinking, oh no, we have Sutton next, who are, you could argue, with their games in hand and what, they're the best team in the league at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we would need a full strength side for that. And we don't know whether Reece Johnson's back. I don't know, because Keats likes to keep his card close to the chest.
Yeah.
So maybe we'd have to drop Tyler French back into centre back and put Horsfield on at right wing back for that game. Maybe I don't know. I'm not the manager, but yeah, it was frustrating to see him get a red because I think once all our defenders are back fit, we'd have a very strong defensive unit in Kelleher, Vassell, and Tyler French at centre backs. I think that's a very good back three, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I mean, although Vassell is an excellent centre back, and when the team settles and he's fit and available, surely he's in the team. The truth is that the back three that you mentioned that we might have to play is one that's done very well for us in the last sort of 6, 7, 8 games. It's been very effective. So it's maybe not the biggest disaster. It's nice to see players coming back and for us to have competition for places, though. And also, I mean, I don't know. It's a strange one, isn't it? Because Sean Pearson, Dean Keats has been quite rightly praising Mark Carrington this week in the press because he's been fantastic playing at centre back. And I mean, it's weird to think, I mean, he could be fighting then to get a place somewhere else in the team, considering how really well he's played. And the last 2 matches, I think, particularly the Hartlepool game and the Wealdstone game, he's been outstanding for me. Oh
yeah, he's been brilliant. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking Carrington at all. I just personally think that Vassell, Kelleher, and French are our best back three, and you've got to forget. We're forgetting about Pearson as well. It's mad, isn't it? It feels like it's been an eternity.
And there've been promising sounds coming from about him that he might be back in a few weeks. It's better than people expected.
It's fantastic. Yeah. It's fantastic, but I know it might sound brutal because he's a fan favourite, but I don't see how he could get back in the team because Kelleher, he'd be playing in Kelleher's role, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And I think Kelleher is, I think he's a fantastic centre back. Reminds me of Brian Carey. He's just brilliant. And also one player we haven't even mentioned yet, and I can't believe we haven't mentioned, is Kwame Thomas.
Oh yeah, that guy scored 2. Yeah, true. Yeah.
He was outstanding on Saturdays in the second half, wasn't he?
Yeah. He's on fire now, isn't he? I mean, he's really doing well. I'm so glad he's scoring goals. He's now scored twice as many goals this season as he has in any season of his career. Most he'd scored in the season before this year was 4, and now he's got 8. And I mean, he's a lovely bloke actually, so I'm glad for him in that respect. But yeah, he links well with Angus as well, doesn't he? Having 2 players who are able to stretch the defence like that is causing teams problems. And Thomas is a good all-round striker, isn't he? He can hold the ball up. He's terrific in the air, and he attacks the 6-yard box. The only thing we need to add now is maybe getting a few more crosses in for him to attack with his head, because in pre-season he looked very good at that. But no, I mean, all power to him. He's done fantastically well for us.
Well, and he's also good with the ball at his feet, dribbling as well. For the man of his size, he seems to have everything. He's one of the top strikers in the league at the moment, I'd say, quite easily. But I think that is credited to having Diorangas come in, who's also got equal amount of quality and does a lot of the hard work. So I really, really do like that striking partnership. And he almost got a hat-trick, didn't he?
Oh, that was just so cruel, that was. You know, I mean, he deserved to get a hat-trick, didn't he? And he's been on a hat-trick a couple of times this season now. And, I mean, that was doubly heartbreaking for me because, firstly, Thomas just misses out on his hat-trick twice in the 6-yard box. And then, after that, you've got the ball coming back in. And Ponticelli, you know, the one thing we're more desperate for than Thomas getting a deserved hat-trick, Ponticelli scoring, and he heads it just wide. Oh, that was painful.
I didn't know what I wanted more. Ponticelli to score or Kwame Thomas to get his hat-trick. But I think Ponticelli played okay when he come on as well.
Yeah.
The second half performance was outstanding. And I think what a performance to have, especially after the first half, leading into such a huge game this Saturday.
Yeah. I'm curious about it as well. People keep talking, quite rightly, about the difference between first and second half performances this season. It's not always the case. We have had some good first halves. I'm just wondering if a pattern's starting to form here where we actually are a squad that's better suited to getting at teams than sitting back. I know we've got a good defence, but that, you know, in the first half, we were maybe a little bit passive. If my theory is correct, that we were trying to bring them onto us a bit so we can knock over the top, that, you know, it didn't suit us to be so passive in that sense. And we are better off actually when we try and really go at a team. I mean, you mentioned Weymouth as well. There's another example of, okay, the first half was awful. We're going to have to sort this out, get in there and throw caution to the wind. And when we start doing that, when you've got wing backs tearing up and down the line, when you've got Thomas causing problems in the box, then things start to happen. So can we adopt a bit more of an aggressive tone at the start, perhaps?
Maybe it's like a rope-a-dope sort of strategy as well.
Yeah.
It sort of is, isn't it? And
yeah.
I can't say much better things about the second half, but yeah. Any other notable performances you'd like to talk about from the team?
I mean, midfield's picture. There were a lot of half performances, weren't there? First half didn't quite work. Second half, Jordan Davis played a lot of good challenges. When I went back and looked at my notes before doing the sort of post-match podcast, I realised how many involvements he'd had in starting moves. I hadn't had many sort of killer passes or shots on goal, but when I started looking at my notes, a number of times it's like Davis won the ball or Davis played the person then who put a cross in. He did a very good job, I thought. The other thing, of course, you have mentioned, that bizarre instance at the start where we thought we'd scored. We were all convinced we'd scored. A Records corner hit the far post. Kelleher couldn't quite reach it on the way in, and then somehow it didn't hit him and go in on the way back out, which I think is another element to why we sometimes have disappointing first halves, because we often start a game well, but don't take our chances, although I admit that one was more of a freak occurrence. And because the ball, if that would have gone in then, I think we may have absolutely hammered Wealdstone, to be honest with you. But it didn't. And so we had to wait till the second half to start going. There have been a few games this season, Altrincham at home's another example. We've done well to start off with, but the chances aren't converted. And we then find ourselves chasing the game.
But I think Wealdstone are a better side than most give credit for as well.
Yeah.
Because they beat Bournemouth the other day.
Yeah.
And they're a good side, Bournemouth, at the moment. 1-0. So if Wealdstone carry on winning their games, it makes the 4-1 result that we had look a lot better. Then you've got to be even more happier with it. Because I think people look at Wealdstone and think, oh, we should be smashing these. But yeah, for us to get the result, 4-1 home, that'll do, leading us into the Sutton game, which I thought was going to be this Tuesday. but no, it's Saturday. So yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add? What was your overall thoughts and feelings on the Wealdstone game as a whole?
I'm delighted with it, simply because the second half sort of wipes out the first half and gives us momentum. and confidence. It doesn't matter who you beat; you can only beat who's put in front of you. Although you are quite right to point out people shouldn't underestimate Wealdstone. They nearly won at Torquay a couple of weeks ago as well. They'd come to the game off a draw against Eastleigh, who were in good form. You're quite right. I just think they're a little vulnerable at the back, but they can take the game to teams. And as you said before, Jacob Belmondi, I was saying in commentary, buy him for next season. He looks really good. But the thing is, it creates momentum and confidence. You can see Thomas' confidence is absolutely coursing through him, and he's up for it. And when you go into a big game like going to Sutton, you need that confidence. Of course, everyone, if you want a bit more detail on that Sutton game, our preview podcast will be coming out as well. Well, by the time this is published, will have come out, where we'll go through that game and say what we're expecting from it. But I'm just happy that it builds confidence and positivity, and we are now. I mean, we said this after we lost, didn't we? When you lose, you got to keep going, and we've only lost one at the time 7. We've now lost 1 in 8. That's how you get promoted. Just after every game, your total's a bit higher than it was last time. You just keep grinding away, and certainly if you achieve that, you're certainly going to come top 7, which will put you in the playoffs. So I'm pretty positive about that. That's good.
Well, definitely, and I think the result against Wealdstone puts us in a good place to just have a positive result for Sutton. So if we don't win, if we just avoid losing to Sutton, it puts us in a really good position. Yeah. So I'm happy with these sort of forms where we're just chipping away at teams and we're getting points on the board.
There's no outstanding team in this division except possibly Sutton. I admit. You know what I'd say about Torquay if you ask me. They're not going to win it. They're not going to win it. In fact, Sutton could overtake them on Saturday if they beat us. So, there's nothing to fear, I don't think, in this division. All teams are erratic. We're one of them. Teams that pick up form at this point will be in with a big shout of promotion, and we seem to be picking up some momentum. So, it's quite promising, I hope. Well, from momentum, we'll go to a time in the club's history when sadly that was lacking. Carl Tremarco joined the club during our relegation season from the Football League in the January. And actually, I mentioned this in the interview. I didn't realise until I looked at it that his stats are actually very good in terms of results, which you wouldn't think. We actually did have a bit of a renaissance in the second half of that season, but it wasn't enough. But anyway, I caught up with Carl, who had some fascinating things to say about his time at the racecourse. And so after this, you'll be hearing from Carl Tremarco.
I'm Kerry Evans, and you're listening to Dragonheart Radio Show.
Oh, well, firstly, Carl, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. You came to Wrexham under Brian Little in a sort of crazy time. We're bottom of the league. 13 players came in during that transfer window. It was, and yet I think it started off quite optimistically, I think, didn't it?
Well, the thing we first game actually played, we beat MK Dons at home 1-0, if I remember rightly, and they were top of the league. But obviously I knew Brian at Tranmere. And when he left there, Ronnie Moore took over at Tranmere. And actually, he didn't want me to leave Ronnie Moore, but at the time, the age I was at, I was in and out of the team, and I just wanted to play regular week in, week out, because my career kind of stalled at that point. I just seen it as a great opportunity just to go and play regular games. Obviously disappointed how the season panned out in the end, but it was an opportunity for me to go and play regularly for at least 4 or 5 months for the season finished.
I mean, it started, like you said, so positive. That win over MK Dons was by far and away the best performance of the season. And actually, when you look at our results at the end, I was a little surprised looking back at it this morning that we actually finished the season pretty well. You played in 10 games and we won 4 of them, drew 4 of them, and only lost 2, which, considering what had gone beforehand, because we were terrible that season. We only won 10 games all season. We got 4 of them just in that 10-game period. We weren't necessarily playing like a relegation team then, were we?
No, I'll be honest. Like the first 6 months or before January, obviously I was at Tranmere, so I did keep an eye out just because Brian Little was my ex-manager. So you'd always tend to keep an eye out on what your fellow colleagues are up to and whatnot. So I always did keep an eye out, but not to an extent where I'd seen how poor or bad Wrexham were up until January. And don't get me wrong, we weren't amazing from January onwards because obviously we went down at the end of the season, but there was definitely an improvement, enough so that the board decided to keep him on in the conference. But yeah, I think the last game of the season was Lincoln away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We turned them over as well. Like, you're right though. There was some because I think it was York City away was when the final nail was put in the coffin. I think Hereford. Yes, I was injured. I was injured that game, so I actually went down there. York City were in the conference game of the season after. Yeah, I was injured that game, so I actually went down there. But I just remember seeing on the scores, obviously, it all coming in, and just thought, oh, geez, it's first relegation on me CV, which was not nice. At all.
I mean, you could perhaps argue that if it wasn't for you and Danny Sonner getting injured when you did, which was like, I remember you got your first knock at the Morecambe game, and then you got another injury. Maybe we'd have got a few extra points. Who knows? Because you were making an influence at left back. Sonner looked like the sort of foot on the ball midfielder that you don't usually get at clubs down at that level.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, coulda, woulda, and what ifs and buts, and it's everyone can say that in hindsight they've done this and blah blah. But I remember Danny Sonner. I remember at the time thinking he was just coming to the end of his career. But I do remember thinking he had the old head on, and he did bring a calming influence to young boys around him, because we did have young boys. Yeah. We had young boys around, and I think it was Flemo, and there was a boy, Levi Mack, and they were just breaking into the team, and they were good players. And he was the right mould for them to kind of keep them on the side that we need to, because everyone needs to be pulling in the right direction when you're in a dogfight in that. And I remember when we lost him, there was just something in there that wasn't quite working, which was a shame. But you need luck when you're down there as well, and luck is keeping everyone fit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A positive from that time, you've played in a derby win at Chester. that was nice. Yeah. I mean, you're the thing that sticks in my head about you is your competitiveness and your will to win, and so winning a game in that atmosphere, that must have been pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was, and I can tell you, they are feisty derbies, aren't they? My dad was actually, I don't know what the crack was with the ticket allocation, but I know Wrexham weren't allocated tickets, and the only reason I got a ticket for my dad was Kevin Ellison was at Chester at the time, and my dad had to sit in the Chester end, and the dog's abuse he was getting was ridiculous. Like, he was nearly fighting. Because obviously, I mean, he wasn't stupid enough to start jumping up and down when Wrexham scored and that, but I think it cottoned on, like, he's not on our side here, and a few of the locals weren't too happy with him and stuff. But no, that was a highlight. It was a highlight of that season. Yeah, I remember 2-0 Paul Hall. Did Hawley get 2 that game?
Yeah, then Paul got 1. I think Michael Proctor, did he get the other one?
Proctor get 1, yeah.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good day. Away, the DV, was a good day, though.
Well, tell you, Dad, I feel his pain, because every time we play at Chester, the press box is just the back row of the stand, and so I'm getting excited when we score, and I'm surrounded by Chester fans. But they're not too bad. They must be the posh ones in the stand. They're generally all right, Now, the next season, of course, I mean, and this again another thing I think people forget. We started really well. I remember, 7th game of the season, something like that. We won at Salisbury 4-1. We went top of the table. The first game of the season, we played Stevenage, who do go up, and who are the favourites, and we battered them 5-0. I mean, at that point, we must have been thinking, "Oh, this is going to be okay. We can get up here."
Yeah, and again, I remember specifically after that game, like, I was one of them. I was saying vocally, like, listen. This is a game. This is a one-off game. You see strange results at the first game of the season anyhow. So I was like, this doesn't mean it's going to be as easy as you think. Because I actually remember how easy that game finished. Half an hour to go, it was literally just passing. And I was quite surprised, because I thought Stevenage were going to be a strong team. But I said straight after the game, that's not going to be the reflection of the season. It's not going to be like that. So if you get that in your heads, you need to lose that straight away, because it's not. Yet we had a good start to the season. And obviously, it dwindled away.
It was weird because so we went top at Salisbury.
Mm-hmm.
Just over 3 weeks later, Brian Little's gone. And when you look at the results, all right, I've just got them in front of me. We lost our own to Burton, but they won the league that year. We lost at Cambridge. Well, Wrexham losing at Cambridge is fairly normal, to be honest. The thing that, we beat Ebbsfleet, and yet the thing that really seemed to make a change of attitude at the club was when we lost at Grays. I don't know if maybe people at the club, fans, felt you ought to win somewhere like that. You know what I mean? But I remember that was the game where everyone suddenly got very negative about things.
I remember it was a Grays away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that game because my missus was actually, I think she was due to give birth that day. And I remember having my phone on the sideline and my phone went off. So I remember that game and my head was I was a very scrambled thinking, do I need to leave here? Because, I didn't want to, I didn't obviously want to miss the birth and stuff. But I also remember after the game, I think it was Big Darren Kempson, stood on the halfway line and he was just like staring into the fans. And I was like, big man, what are you doing? I said, what are you doing? You're just going to provoke fans and, we've just been beat, take it on the chin and take the criticism that we're going to get because everyone's rightly so can have an opinion on football matches. And at the minute, mate, we just lost to Grays and we're favourites to go up. Take it on the chin and let's go. But yeah, it was strange, and I was very surprised when the gaffer left. To be fair, I was disappointed because I haven't worked with him before. I knew what he was capable of, and I just thought the first sign of a little bump in the road, they were quick to get shut. Whether it was premeditated with Dean Saunders and they already had them in line. As soon as the boat gets rocked, we'll bring Saunders in. But yeah, it seemed to happen so quick. Which I was disappointed with, to be fair.
I always remember, because at that time I was almost like a one-man media team, really. We got a lot more people working now, thank goodness. And while commentating, I had a decent camera, and I'd sometimes try and take some photos, while I was talking. And I took, probably the best one I ever took was one of yourself. After we'd let a goal in, you looked just gutted. And then in the background, you can see the club owners standing in on the terrace behind, deep in conversation. It felt like a sort of, it summed it all up. This was a bad result. The players were feeling it. And then in the background, the owners were talking about the future. We played Rushden in midweek, lost 3-0 at home. Brian went at the end of that week. And I'll be honest with you, I've never felt, I don't know, watching the game, that Rushden match, it just felt like they're not, I don't know how to say this really, but I just felt they're going to change him now. They're not good. This is going to be the end for him. It was such an empty performance in a way, and I just thought they'll take this as the final straw for him. I think because we really didn't.
Yeah, you can obviously I've played the game 20 odd years now, and performances can say a lot. Say we'd have lost that game 3-2 with a fighting spirit.
Yeah,
he could have still got the sack. But the owner's minds might have been made up. But yeah, I remember that game, and I'm sure I played centre half. Did I play centre half? Or we played 3 at the back. I think we changed formation or something. And yeah, and it was just a bad day. And like I think everyone knew then that maybe the writing was on the wall. But again, I still think it was too quick. The problem you got with the conference is it's game after game after game after game. You don't get like Saturday, so you get a week to prepare. It's always Saturday, and then more often than not, it's Tuesday. So whatever went wrong on a Saturday, you've only got maybe a day you need to recover, and you've only got a day maybe to work on things. And I just don't think he had that time for the full week sessions and working on shape and defensive whatever, and then going from Saturday. So yeah, so it was what it was, and yeah, and unfortunately Brian Little's time was up.
And as well, probably didn't help him that there was such a big churn of players. Like I say, brought in a lot in the window you came in. Then we had another overhaul in the summer. And we would be looking for a formation that would work as well. So we would alter things sometimes. I mean, I think that must have been difficult for everybody, like trying to settle on something.
Yeah, there was a big turnover. And like you said, in the January before we went down and obviously in the summer. And I think you do feel responsible when the manager, brings you in personally and it doesn't work out for them, and you still got your job, and the manager falls by the wayside. you do take it to heart a little bit, and plus having the fact that I'd known him for a few years anyway, giving me debut in professional football, so I was quite close to him. But yeah, it was just maybe, I don't know, it's hard to put a finger on it. Maybe there was too big of a turnover of players, but like I guess I said before, it's all hindsight and whatnot. But even when Dean Sohn was coming, like I said, there was another big turnover. There was another big turnover, and like I said, that mainly Brian Little's players, fell by the wayside, and he brought in all his new players, which is what new managers do.
Well, I was going to say that. I mean, you're absolutely right. Saunders comes in, there's a huge turnover going on before the transfer window happens, and then in the transfer window as well. And it really, I'll be honest, surprised me enormously that you were one of the players who seemed to go by the wayside. He brought in Sam Williamson, who's a good left back. Don't get me wrong, but I never understood at the time. I thought, well, we've got a good left back. Maybe there's other areas we could look at. And yeah, you seem to fall out of favour with him, which was a shock to me.
It happens. I mean, yeah, I was extremely disappointed. And what I will say though is that I still trained the same way, and even though he brought in another left back and he promoted Neil Taylor, which you can say was a brilliant move. Obviously, Tim Man's had a great career and stuff, so yeah, fair play. But yeah, the Sam Williamson one was like, right, okay, well, where does that leave me then? And then as it turned out, I ended up going to Darlington on loan, which was brilliant for me. I think I only lasted a month there, and then they went into administration, so I had to come back. And then this was in Darlington in League Two at the time, sitting third, and I was thinking, well, how come I can't get a game for Wrexham, but I can get a game for Darlington? It was frustrating, and again, I come full circle again, and my career started kind of stumbling. And then I started having problems with Dean Saunders because he wouldn't. When I come back home from Darlington, I spoke to him. I played one game. We played Northwich Victoria away. We won 2-1. Played in that game. That could have been the last game I actually ever played for Wrexham.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And that was it. There's no and I was like, well, hang on. Okay, so when I seen him, I had the conversations, and he didn't give me any straight answers, and he had assistant Terry Dragonheart who just didn't get on with it at all, which I thought it would actually, because he was a Scouser. I thought, yeah, we've got a bit in common and stuff. But I'm old school, and he was old school, but he was old school, and we just clashed. We just didn't get on, and which was fine. It happens. So anyway, so I went back in, and I had a chance to go to Macclesfield on loan, and that's when the problem started, because he wouldn't let me. And I was like, well, what do you want me for then? I'm not even sub. I'm in the. You made me travel to Ebbsfleet away, and I was in the stand, and I was like, why are you doing this to me? Let me leave. I'll rip my contract when I walk, no problem. Again, I was training. I was trying to do things right. Certain things happened where the coaching staff tried to belittle me a little bit, and I'm not going to stand for that. So I ended up saying stuff, and then we had a big falling out in front of everyone, and it wasn't nice. And then that was it. I sat on my backside all season, which was disappointing. Tried to get out on loan, which he wouldn't let me. And then the summer come, and again, he had no intentions to let me leave. So it was a case of where I had to say, listen, I'll have to down tools, and what do you want me to do? He had me by the crown jewels, and I couldn't do nothing about it. And I was so frustrated because I had the option to leave, and he wouldn't let me go. But I didn't understand why, because I was one of the highest paid as well. I was like, listen, you can get me off the wage bill, and no hard feelings. It is what it is. It happens in football. But for some reason, I'm not sure whether it was a power thing. I don't know. And he liked having control, but he just wouldn't let me go, which was strange to me.
Well, I'll back you up with the figures here. Like I said, I've got the spreadsheet of all the games. The last 34 games of that season, you started one and you were a sub in one, which is, you were fit. It's just, for a senior player who's shown the quality, that you clearly there's something else going on, isn't there? And there were a few players that a lot of fans thought were getting frozen out because there was so much, this huge bloated playing staff with all these big turnovers all the time. That season is the season we played more players in that season in any other season in Wrexham's history. And the year before, was the second most players in the Wrexham's history.
Yeah.
Shows the number of players who came in, and
shows how much money the club must have wasted.
Yes, yeah,
on wages and do you know what I mean? And I remember in that the summer after the first season of the conference is I think a lot of us ended up getting paid up, but it was by I ended up getting a pay up for doing something like I hated doing. I had to literally down tools, and I had to I fell out with them all. I was like, I'm not doing it. I had Macclesfield want to sign me. You're not letting me go. Like, what's the problem? They had us in over the summer. He made us. This was all the players who weren't involved, by the way. Like he had his team and a squad, which was fine, and then he had his reserves and the ones who we didn't want. And us lot were in every Sunday after the game, while the lads who were involved on a Saturday were off. And then during that summer, Dean Saunders has made us give our holiday dates in, and then every day we went on holiday, we were in training, and I just that was what killed me. And I was like, no, I can't stand for that. Like, especially for someone who's actually wanting to leave. So unfortunately enough, it down tools, but it worked. And in the end, I got a call, and then that was it. My time was up, and I was away, and I was okay. No hard feelings. I've seen things Saunders since, and I was quite taken back by him. And it was like, you treated me pretty poor, if I'm being honest. I don't mean like not playing and stuff. Like, if you didn't rate me as a player, that's fine. Like you said, like that happens in football. But it was the fact the way you treated me around the place, and you didn't let me leave to move on, which was strange. Anyway, and I seen him again, and he was all buddy and pally, and I was like, okay. It was strange. I mean, I was fine with him, and I was like, wish them all the best for the season, one of them. But it was like just strange. It was just strange, and like I've always got a bitter taste in that, because I was part of the team that fell into the conference, and I cannot believe they're still there.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot believe it. And that's something I'm thinking, I was part of that, because they're a huge, huge club. So, like, massive, brilliant club, brilliant fan base. Shouldn't be in the conference. I got a bit of taste, because I was part of that, even if it was 4 months towards the end of that League 2 season, and we fell into the conference.
Well, like you said about the bloated wage bill, I mean, that's a big part of why I think we went down and stayed down, was the financial problems at the club. I mean, did that did the players feel that or not? Sometimes I think players might be a little bit cocooned from those sort of things. If the pay comes in, you're all right. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, money was an issue for me, because I actually signed for Wrexham in the conference. Rotherham offered me more money in League 2. But like I said, I had total faith in Brian Little, trusted him. Like I said, I was tight with him, and I was like, nah. I could have went and played for Rotherham and earned more money, but I never. So, me personally, that didn't come into consideration. I don't know what other players were earning whenever they come in, but by all accounts, it was probably the overspent where they could. And like I said, it's eventually come back to bite them in the bum, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think they've been since then they've been struggling to get back to any, because I think after I left, there was a couple of seasons where they made the playoffs. Yeah. So like they were close, but I think there was one specific season where I got wind of like they're having a right go, and if this is not the season, then they're going to struggle.
Yeah.
And like they didn't go up. So yeah. So it's disappointing to see.
Yeah, we had an incredible team. We got 98 points, but didn't go up because Fleetwood had Jamie Vardy, basically.
That was it.
That's the record still in the top 5 divisions in English football. No other team has got 98 points and not been promoted. And it was a phenomenal team. But we did overspend during that time as well, and the fans have taken over and have done an incredible job to make the club debt free. Considering that what they inherited was something horrific, and it's because they've done so well with that and some of the things that we've now got this fantastic takeover taking place of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, because they've looked at us, they've seen what we've done in the community, because the fans have done loads of community work, and they've seen the fact that if you buy us, you don't have to stick 2 million in to cover the debt. You can start from scratch. So to be fair, the fans have done an amazing job. And it does, I think, reflect. I'm sure you would have felt it feels like a big club, doesn't it, to be going down?
It is. It is the stadium. The stadium, like I said, the first game I played, MK Dons. Yeah. They obviously MK Dons wrote a big following because they were top of the league, and like I said, the atmosphere was great. The Chester game, like it is a huge club, and I'm just like football. You know, you don't always work out at certain clubs and stuff, and I didn't work out at Wrexham, but I'm disappointed about that because I always thought it'd have been brilliant for me, especially if we'd have stayed in the League Two and whatnot. I could have played a really lot amount of games with them. So yeah, it's a disappointing little chapter in my career. One that I look fondly on because I learned a hell of a lot. Just about like certain people and how the game works. Really, it's not all if you're good enough you play. It's because it's not like that. But yeah, like good memories, more bad memories than good. But it was like I said, it was another step in my career, which is still going.
It certainly is, and I've got to say, I mean, thankfully, because you weren't treated very well by Wrexham at the end, you've gone on and you've thrived. I mean, you've won a Scottish Cup final, admittedly not in the orthodox way, but you've done that. You've been playing at the top end in Scotland for a while now. I mean, it's good to see you thrive. Yeah,
like it's funny how things turn out. Like I said, Macclesfield, I think I had 4 seasons at Macclesfield, and we had a funny enough today's Keith Alexander's anniversary of his death. Mm-hmm. So there was a couple of tragedies there. Butcher as well, one of the lads who passed away. So at the time when I left Mac, it felt the right time to move on. A lot went on there and stuff, and just emotionally, and again another 4 years of my career, it was brilliant. And yeah, chance to go to Scotland was too big an opportunity to turn down. And like I said, my career's kind of gone from there as I got older. It was strange. So it's kind of gone backwards. And like when I was young, I pitted around, and then as I'm getting older, I kind of played at a high level and started winning trophies and stuff. So it worked out in the end.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Carl, can I just say thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I wish you'd have had more time to make an imprint on Wrexham, to be honest.
Same.
I'm glad you've been such a success.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant. Cheers for having me.
I'm Luke Young, and you're listening to the Dragonheart radio show.
Well, Carl Tremarco there, I mean, I always liked him as a player, to be honest with you. And I was always bemused by why Dean Saunders didn't fancy him. He's given a 2-year contract at the start of our first season in non-league. And yeah, I just didn't fancy him. And that leads me on to the discussion of, could we have bounced straight back up? Did we miss an opportunity? Was the lack of stability at the club at the time, because of course there was all sorts of rubbish going on behind the scenes, and the fact that, I mean, let's be honest, in mid-season, the season before, when Brian Little's come in, we have had a massive overhaul of the squad. 13 players came in one transfer window. Then in that summer, we had another massive overhaul. I can't remember the exact figure over the summer, but it was double figures. A lot of players there for around. We had a massive playing staff, paying wages to players who were surplus to requirements, and there would actually be another reshuffle in the January of that season. If we had a bit more stability and actually relied on some of the players that we brought in, I sort of feel like maybe we might have bounced straight back up, because we started the season well. It petered off badly, but I don't know. There's a bit of me thinks we missed the chance there to bounce straight back.
I don't know. My whole thoughts, looking back at all the fixtures we had, we did have a good chunk of being unbeaten, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we went like only one loss and like midway through the season in a big set of games. So yeah, maybe we did. Looking back, but for some reason I don't really remember that season as a missed opportunity, because we did pick up some really bad form towards the end of the season, didn't we, that year? But yeah, looking back at the squad, we did have some good players, didn't we? We had Neil Taylor. Neil Taylor was playing, was he still?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course he was. We had Jefferson Louis, who I know he was quite funny, but he scored 50. I think he scored like 15 goals that season, didn't he? Which is good tally, isn't it?
The thing, I mean, right, things that are out of our control. That fantastic run we had that pushed us right up the table. Mark Williams and Jeff Louis were a fantastic partnership. I think that Williams was extremely important in that partnership, shall we say. I think he was the brains of the operation. And he got that nasty injury. And the moment he dropped out, things started to fall apart. I think Louis missed having a player along. Although Mark Williams is younger than Louis, I think Williams was the player who could guide him a bit. And in that latter part of the season, it's the Salisbury game, last game in February, where Williams is hurt. He doesn't appear again that season, and all of a sudden our form dips. In fact, just to illustrate that, we had 10, 12, 14, 16, we had 18 games after he got injured, and we won 3. And there was a horrible run near the end of the season of 5 games where we didn't score. And there was also a run of 3 games where we didn't score. All of a sudden, we went from a pretty aggressive, nice-looking team to a side that couldn't score to save its life. And as well, in that long spell, Jeff Louis only scored 1 goal. So you can say he scored a lot of goals, but all but 1 came before Williams got injured. So we were unlucky in that sense, and it does make you wonder, because, I mean, like you said, we lost form. We fell a long way off the pace, but that's a lot of points dropped. If we'd maintained our form, who knows?
Or even just drew some of the games you lost, or just not gone on such a mad, heavily losing streak. But for me, no, it was quite clear then. If you just look at the results from that season, we just weren't good enough, were we? Really? Even challenged. But what was your overall thoughts as a fan going into the conference for the first time that season?
You see, before we went down, I was horrified. I'd already been through that 1991 season where we just about saved ourselves from going down, and that was when I'm young enough to still be developing my ideas of football. And generally, it was thought then if you drop into non-league, heaven knows what will happen to you. It's a different world down there. You might never come out again. And so at that point in the 90s, I was thinking, this could be the end of my club. Now, actually, that would have been a good time to go down, because at that point, the Football League team was much better than the non-league sides. And teams like Colchester, like Darlington, dropped down, bounced straight back up again, straight away. It was very straightforwards. And that helped them to regenerate themselves and get their confidence going. By this point, I was still very worried what will become of us if we drop out. But by the time the season started, I actually quite enjoyed that season because it felt like an adventure. You're going to all these new places. And okay, maybe I'm conditioned then by the fact that I probably thought, we'll be all right. This won't last long, but we'll get this right. But going to places I'd never been before, like, Lewis and Salisbury. Crawley was less pleasant, if I'm honest with you. Eastbourne and Lewis were clubs that were so friendly. And Workington, I had a whale of a time there. Just what a nice club. I went there, my dad came as well, and he went into the social club while I sort of set up the commentary equipment. And then I was wandering around the ground taking photos. It was wonderful. I mean, Workington were in the Football League when we joined it in the 1920s. And the ground just looks like that. I'm going to sound patronising, but it just looks like a sort of, if you were filming a sort of fictional show about football in the 1920s, you've got to film it at Workington. The whole stadium looks like that, all apart from the one modern bit. And I had a lovely time wandering around, popped in the social club, and my dad's surrounded by all these old fellas from Workington, all talking about the good old days of football. Incredibly welcoming, wishing us all the best, and it was just, that sort of spirit felt a bit absent in Football League games, where you go into a game, you have a sort of pretty identical ground, you go to the pie shop, you go to the food bar or whatever you call it, and they have the same frozen pies that you find in every football ground, which have all been made in one place and then sent out of the football grounds. And then you go to the National League And I can remember the food I had there. I mean, look at me. I'm a I look after my body. I mean, to be, it's unusual for me. But obviously you're going to say Kidderminster, fair enough. But also, I remember having Cumberland sausages at Workington, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Eastleigh have this mad burger bar where they make crazy burgers. Just the clubs getting local people or fans or businesses to come in and do the catering, so you get variety and people actually making an effort to make something nice rather than something, oh, right, yeah, there, these will come, stick it in the microwave, there you go, son. Just all those little nice touches and enthusiasm of people who would, a club run by people in the community who just want the best for the club. I'm absolutely loved it. But like I said, I think that's partly because I didn't realise we'd be still down here now, perhaps.
Yeah, and it was the same for me. It was my first year being older to go with my mates rather than go with my family to watch games. And it was, as I said, I thought the atmosphere around the racecourse was actually quite good, wasn't it? I think the attendances were all right as well, weren't they, all things considered? And the atmosphere was really loud and it was really positive. We sort of come from that season where we pretty much lost the majority of our games, didn't we? The previous season, to then come in and winning games. And I thought the atmosphere, and we didn't feel like we were entitled to win every game. It was a nice positive atmosphere around the racecourse, and it was really good. I went to some away days. I went to like Burton Albion. That was a tasty away game that season. So it was, I have fond memories of that season because I like yourself. I thought, it's a bit of an adventure there. So we'll only be here for a year or maybe 2 years, and then we'll be back in League Two in no time. And then I obviously didn't quite work out the way it did.
I mean, that's exactly it. The crowds did stand up well until that bad run at the end. Especially considering that all that season, only one team brought over 100 fans, over 200 fans to our away end. Only Altrincham did that. So it was, the crowds were standing up, but also the crowds were just home fans pretty much. I mean, everyone talks, it wasn't this season, about Histon bringing no fans to one match, which was remarkable. They forget that Eastbourne in one game brought one. So there was one person in the away end. And double figures was the norm. So, it was very much the home fans. But like you said, I think the attitudes were different. And that's understandable, I think. I guess our attitudes are different. Then, sometimes one of the good things if you get relegated is that you can then go to a lower level and win games more. It's more fun to watch your team. I think fans at the time felt the club had been put into that situation by stuff off the pitch and it wasn't its fault. Well, it was individuals' faults, but not the whole thing. So there was more of a supportive attitude, perhaps, rather than frustration at not being able to get back up where we should be. I think there was, for a few years, a sort of sense of, okay, we're here now. Well, let's make the most of it and get back up again. But I understand totally that sense has gone because it's gone from us. It's now we really need to get back out of this league. We really need to get into the Football League. But I quite enjoyed it. I can't deny it. You mentioned that Burton game though. I mean, to me, that was a turning point. I remember us going to that. By the way, that's the game before Williams gets injured. We had good momentum going into that game. We were unbeaten in 13 matches and we're really going for it. Now, some of those are trophy matches, I admit, but we were in good form. Burton were the leaders, and I remember going to that game and thinking, if we can win this, they're not out of our reach here. We could pull them back, and we did take the lead. We were winning at half-time. Jeff Louis scores. And a great what-if question there. If we'd won that match, we might have been in a title race. But then, as it is, it turns out the other way. We lose it. Our next two games are the FA Trophy quarterfinals. So again, we're feeling positive. Oh yeah, we're big Wrexham. We're going to win. We could win the league here. We're going to win the FA Trophy, but we lose in the quarterfinal replay against Ebbsfleet. And then Williams gets injured, and we then hit that terrible run in form where we can't score a goal to save our lives. So that was one opportunity, I think, where things could have turned differently if we maintained that momentum and if Williams hadn't got injured. And the other thing is just the number of players that that we had. I mean, just to make it clear, as I mentioned in that interview to Carl, I mean, the relegation season is this season is a season when we use more players than at any other point in our entire history in one season. And it took the record from the previous season, which shows how much disruption there was. But when Saunders comes in, he jettisons a lot of players that I think were capable of doing a decent job. So if I just give you some examples here of players that he decided he didn't fancy. Gavin Ward, who I know you were a fan of, who you used for a bit.
Big fan.
Yeah. Simon Spender, who was a decent fullback and I think still had something left in him. Tremarco, obviously, I rated very highly. I liked Sam Williamson as well, but if you asked me to pick between the two, Tremarco had a bit more presence going forwards, a bit more drive and aggression. I'd go for him. Darren Kempson, who was brought in as a big signing by Brian Little, who was really building up at the time that he's only early 20s. He's terrific physique. He's a great lower division centre back, and he was decent. Nat Brown was a decent, strong, mobile centre back with a lot of experience. He's gone on, to do decently. Steve Evans, although there's a few issues around Steve, but yeah, I mean, Steve Evans was still there when Saunders came in, but didn't play much afterwards. Sean Pedgick only got one game in the conference. Yeah. There's a lot of players like that. Simon Brown, maybe not so much. There's some players who had injuries that changed this. Kyle Critchell only managed 2 games for us because of injuries. He looked a decent player in those 2 games. Richie DeLate, remember him, the lad we brought on loan from Man United? He was a good fullback, and he played like 4 games or something, and we didn't I don't think we got any goals in, or 1 goal in those games. So he was a good fullback. There's a lot of players. The other injury tragedy, Joe Allen. Joe Allen comes in, plays 2 games, and is just clearly many levels higher than the National League. And if we had him for the whole season, oh my, we'd have been quite a team. But second game, serious season-ending injury, and that's your lot. Tom Kearney, who was brought in as our captain, was a nice, tidy midfielder who certainly could have done the job. It's crazy that I'm still listing off players. There are just billions of them, aren't there? Sean Worley, another player who's gone on and had a good career in the Football League. But a lot of these players, Saunders came in, said, I don't fancy you, and they were jettisoned. Michael Proctor, who he lost interest in. It's crazy to think of all those players. Now, you could look at the last season as well. A lot of those 13 that came in January didn't get a fair crack at the whip, really. We had a number of strikers who did well in the Football League. Players like Rob Duffy, who came on, never got a start, just got a few very short sub-appearances, but has scored goals throughout his career since then. We just were throwing around money, bringing in players, not letting them settle. And I just think if there'd been a more settled approach, that is a missed opportunity, really. When you go through all those players who didn't play a role, maybe they could have done.
But that's the key word you said there, settled. The club in general wasn't settled, was it?
No.
Everywhere, everything, the back room, everything, nothing was settled. Obviously, the first team wasn't settled. The politics wasn't settled. The club was in a mess, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I think what went on the pitch that season represented the club as a whole, didn't it?
Absolutely true, yeah. And also this, I don't want to say this, well, Carl said it, didn't he, about Saunders learning how to be a manager at our expense. And no manager's going to get all their signings right, so please don't get me wrong. But I think he had an idea of bringing in players with better technique than the National League. So we just become a better team. And he used his contacts, and it was quite surprising the number of name players that he was able to tempt down to the National League. But the problem was, when you get players like that down to the National League, there's something wrong. If they've got too much quality, there's something wrong. Unless it's a Joe Allen situation where he used his contacts with the Welsh team. Allen knew him Swansea trusted Saunders to give him game time and develop him. And he's a young lad who's too good for that level, but, he needs pitch time. Apart from that, okay, let's go through a few of these stunt signings. Matt Jansen, 3 games, looks decent, scores a nice goal at Northwich, then says, I'm not really interested in this, and goes. So, Patrick Sufo did a good job for us. Please, again, don't get me wrong. He did a good job for us, but his knee was absolutely gone. He only started 3 games for us. He came in November, started 3 games. He just couldn't get around the pitch. He'd drop off, link play up, and he knew there was absolutely no chance he could then get into the box. And I had a lot of time for Sufo, to be honest. I think he is a good pro, but he should have retired, really, Then Andrew Crofts, okay, maybe he gave us a bit more stability, to be fair. Lots of young lads like Nathan Wolfe, Angelos Chaklis, Nathan Fairhurst, nice, tidy, skillful players, but not quite as good as Joe Allen and not able to impose themselves. John Brown, another one, who basically made a great early impact because they were better than the National League, but they weren't physically able to sustain that, and they all faded really quite badly. Here's a stunt signing, Christian Jean, 2 starts, debut in midfield at Workington, right back in that poor first quarter-final against Ebbsfleet, absolutely disappears. This is a bloke who's won the Europa League. This is a bloke who played for Feyenoord loads of times, and yet, by the time he's brought him to us, there's something clearly wrong. It was a very weird sort of scattergun approach to sign John Curtis. Solid fullback, but genuine injury problems, and he ends up breaking down near the end of the season. It's crazy signings, but were they learning on the job at our expense? Were they the signings that were going to give us something sustainable, or do we need to say, all right, we got Spender. John Curtis might be okay, but Spender's lively. He was doing well in the Football League. Let's just get him back in the side and rehabilitate him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it sort of epitomises the whole Dean Saunders era, wasn't it? I know he got us into the playoffs that one season, but that, as Tremarco said, he did learn. He was learning on the job, wasn't he, at our expense? That's a perfect way to put it. And I think Dean Saunders leaving at the time he did, I know we're going a bit off track here, was perfect, wasn't it? Having Morale come in and take over his job. I think Saunders laid a good foundation, and I think we played all right football under him, but I think him leaving was the best thing for us as well as him himself.
I think so. An overview of Saunders in a way for me is that he was indulged by the board for reasons I'm not going to totally go into, really, in terms of why we spent so much, but he was indulged by the board. I've got to say, I'm saying about learning at our expense. I don't mean that personally. I'm not criticizing it. If I was a manager and my board would give me anything I wanted, I wouldn't think, I shouldn't. I'd keep asking. The boards had to say, mate, we've used 40 players this season. You got 10 players there that you're not using. Coach them, use them, motivate them. You know what I mean? I don't blame him. Managers ask, and a responsible board have to at some point say no. But we weren't. So he was getting indulged and allowed to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. Think about a normal situation. You give a manager the resources to completely rebuild a squad. If he then comes back at the next transfer window and says, I'm not happy with this squad, under normal circumstances, you turn around and say, well, sorry, we backed you in the summer. We'll give you money for a couple of players, fair enough. But you built this squad. You make it sing. That's what normally would happen. But instead, he was given basically 3 transfer windows in a row, because the next summer he gets rid of a lot of players and he builds up a team which is much more based on that young talent, which again doesn't really get anywhere. And then the next summer he rips it all up again, and he does get it right then. So there's like 2 years, if you like, of this experimenting. The next summer he mixes experience of youth, gets a bit better quality in, and starts the foundations of that 98 points season team the year after. But again, it's about massive spending. It's about really large spending. And I think you're right. So, morale was crucial for us. I mean, let's be honest, Saunders left because Jeff Moss left. And that's a bit disappointing when he talked a lot about getting this club out of the division. But then when he constructed a team that could get out of the division, he then left because he didn't like the change of ownership. And I think we were exceptionally fortunate in having Morel there because he was made to hang around for a long time as caretaker. And he did it because he could take the bigger view, which a lot of managers can't, that this club needs stability. And although he did say, I want to be appointed, I'd like this to get moving, he didn't rock the boat. And he waited and waited because I think a lot of other managers would have rocked the boat and caused disruption at a time when things he couldn't afford during that takeover for him to get disrupted. Also, he had the common sense to see that when you inherit a team like that, most managers want to impose themselves, don't they? Oh, I'll bring a couple of players in. I'll improve this. I'll bring my lads in as well. He had the common sense to see, this is a good side. Ain't broke, don't fix it. Make the most of that side.
That's just Morel. He's a class act on and off the pitch, isn't he? A true professional and one of the best strikers and even one of the best managers we've ever had, in my opinion. I don't think anyone at the club, fan, media team member, ex-owners, could say a bad word about Andy Morel, could you really?
Oh, he's a top bloke.
So, yeah. And commentator as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The stats back you up, of course, because the only manager in our history who's got better stats than him. I admit you can twist statistics. For example, this is the lowest level ever played in. It would be wrong to say that our National League team with 98 points is the best one in our history because it's playing at the lowest level in our history. But the fact is that there's only one manager who's had better stats than him over the course of his career, and that's Sam Ricketts. But I think that's okay. I'm going to twist stats to suit my argument now, aren't I? I think that's a false statistic because Ricketts started very well, and before he left, results were tailing off. And also, it's a very small data set. Ricketts was manager for less than half a season. So if you take a small number, any statistician will tell you a small amount of data will more likely bring you an inaccurate sort of result. I would contest that Ricketts started very well, but things were starting to drift before he left, and that process would probably have continued. I think he reverted to the mean. If you take Morel's early games, then you've got terrifying figures, haven't you? Because we just flew in the early stages of the Morel. He deserved a lot of credit, but I can't help wondering whether we had a chance to bounce back. And like you say, the instability at the club essentially scuppered that. I don't know.
Well, it was an interesting conversation, man. It was nice to cast myself back to that first season in the conference. It seems like such a eternity away now, doesn't it? But it was nice casting my mind back on that season.
Absolutely. Well, let's do a bit more reminiscing after the break and remember Juan Ugarte, who has a very notable anniversary coming today.
I'm Elliot Durrell, and you're listening to the Dragonheart Radio Show.
Yeah, this is a momentous anniversary because on this day, in 2005, Juan Ugarte, the ultimate cult hero, let's be honest, less than a season, but what he achieved, wow. And in that great British style, we love a heroic loser more than anything else. And although we won the LDV Vans trophy with him scoring in the final, we also got relegated that season, despite the fact he couldn't stop scoring to save his life. But yeah, on this day, Juan Ugarte set a club record, 5 goals scored in an away league match. No other Wrexham player has ever done that. A crazy game. I'm pleased to say I was there at Hartlepool. Hartlepool 4, Wrexham 6. And it was just, what an astounding achievement by a fascinating and, frankly, astounding player.
Oh, yeah. Everyone has fond memories of Juan, don't they? Everyone has a memory of Juan Ugarte, whether it's the LDV Vans final, where he scored that goal that got us ahead. But that Hartlepool game in particular, my memories of that, because I obviously couldn't go because I was very young. I didn't really go to away games much that season. It was the Jeff Stelling on Gillette Soccer Sports when he kept on reading out his name. Oh, and Juan Ugarte's got another goal because he's a Hartlepool fan. So that was my memory of it, and I thought that was hilarious.
It was just nuts from start to finish. You know, I mean, we were, as I said, in a relegation scrap, but with one foot, maybe more than a foot in the LDV Vans final, because we'd already won 5-3 in the first leg away from home. But in the league, we'd not won in 6, drawn 5 and lost 1. And we needed a win. We needed to start trying to get back up the table. We'd had the 10 points deduction by then, which had dropped us into the bottom 4. And it was just frantic. They scored in the 4th minute. So straight away we're losing. You thought, oh, here we go. Ugarte equalises 11th minute and then puts us ahead by the 25th. Sorry, by a half an hour, it's level again. Ugarte gets his hat-trick in the 35th minute with a penalty. Fair play. But then they come back again, 3-3. And actually, incredibly, they take the lead with 6 minutes left. So we're losing with 6 minutes left. But then Ugarte gets his 5th, and Mark Jones actually gets one as well. Ugarte's last minute. Jones is the one who actually puts us ahead 4 minutes from the end. Ugarte then scores in the last minute. But it was just, if you pushed up against Ugarte, he was so quick, he'd get in behind you, and his finishing was very confident. But it was, you know, he could do a lot of the different penalty area things, if you will. You know, he was good one-on-one. He was good at attacking the 6-yard box. He was also good at the spectacular. You know, I remember a goal at Chesterfield, knocked over the top, runs onto it, and just in his stride nails it on the volley. You know, he was a great all-round striker, really. He was quite something. But that game was amazing.
Oh yeah, he was obviously well coached, wasn't he? Because he was friends. Was he friends with Alonso growing up?
Alonso, yeah.
But and Arteta as well. Was it he was friends with?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I mean, Arteta's background's at Real Sociedad, isn't it? Certainly Ugarte came over, as I understand it, on the recommendation of Xabi Alonso, and had to try with Liverpool, didn't he? And Liverpool.
Yeah, I could be completely wrong, but he was a cut above the rest of that. In a lot of the teams, well, not a lot of players in that team. He's absolutely class, but I just think it's an absolute shame he didn't stay for another season.
Yeah, absolutely, and a shame as well that when he did finally come back, I mean, actually, he was injured. He couldn't play then when he came back. It was a real pity, but yeah, I mean, he was just. It was great as well because we did have good creative players around him. So Darren Ferguson was there, Mark Jones was there. You know, we had players who could feed him, and a smart manager in Dennis Smith, which doesn't hurt. The weird thing is, of course, that as you said, as you were young, thanks for rubbing it in, and weren't able to get to away games, I guess you had a bit of a different Juan Ugarte experience from me. Yeah,
he batted away from home, apparently. I forgot the stat you just said before, but he only scored not even a handful of goals at the racecourse, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right, 2. He only scored 2 goals at the racecourse. How bizarre is that? I mean, it really is something else, isn't it? He scored 26 goals in 31 starts, but only 2 at the racecourse. I mean, huh? Why?
That's crazy. But he also, as well, made the Chester Sard as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fond memories of Wrexham fans. Was that the first time we played Chester in a long time? That wasn't it?
I'll double check that. But
because it was a good period of time before. Well, I was going to watch him for a good few years. And I was only a kid, and I don't remember us playing Chester. So
yeah, they got relegated, hadn't they? So
yeah,
it must have been a few years, I think. But I mean, that was his first goal. When your first goal for Wrexham is the only goal in an away derby in the cup, because it was the LDV Vans, I'd argue, you've already set yourself up with the Wrexham fan base anyway, haven't you? And that was the classic sort of Sniffers goal, wasn't it? Just run to the near post, driven cross, bang. And he could do a bit of everything. I wonder if that's why, because that sharpness and pace and anticipation, I wonder if that's why he was so effective in away games. You know, teams at home pushing up a bit, trying to take the game to you, leaving space in behind, and he could do that as well. And I just thought as well, I forgot a very obvious quality player to give him ammunition. Carlos Edwards as well was at the club.
Yeah.
And the tragedy is, of course, that team with all those players and with Ugarte's goals goes down. And I gotta be honest, I deliberately, and I'm being snotty here, I don't use the word relegated. They were demoted. We had 10 points taken off us for going into administration. I don't disagree with that rule, but they should have listened to our appeal, because we went to administration to save the club, not to pull off a bit of financial chicanery. They should have allowed us to do that and not knock the 10 points off. If you had the 10 points back on, we'd have stayed up. And we should have stayed up with a team like that, with Ben Foster in goal as well. And, you know, cracking players, Dennis Lawrence, Stephen Roberts.
Well, I think we would have kicked on that season after a few additions.
Yeah.
You know, we might even be able to keep Ben Foster on for a season. I know he went to United, but maybe we would have kept him on season, or maybe alone if we kept him at League One. We were still at League One, but I think we could have really kicked on. It's such a, even though I look back at that team with so much fondness, it's just so sad that we had that 10 points deduction, isn't it?
Well, we may well get Ugarte.
Yeah.
I mean, Ugarte loved it with us, and he only moved to a team in League One, didn't he? I think, or was it the Championship? But I think there's a good chance he'd have stayed on. It's painful, that. And also doubly painful, the side who are rescued by us losing 10 points is MK Dons. Another reason to dislike MK Dons, to be honest.
Oh, well, the long list of reasons to not like MK Dons.
Exactly. But that was quite a feat by Ugarte. But to be fair, it wasn't in isolation. He piled up hat-tricks away from home, obviously. He scored 2 at home. He can't score any home hat-tricks. But he was a remarkable player in our history, really, wasn't he? And it was a crazy season, but it was a delight to have him with us.
A real cult hero, and I think he would do. It would be nice to see how he would do in like a five-a-side match.
Gosh, you know what? Well, firstly, Jay, can I just say that was exactly what I was about to say. We both had the same idea, because after this, we'll be talking about what is our dream Wrexham AFC all-time five-a-side team.
I'm Reece Johnson, and you're listening to the Dragonheart radio show.
Oh, we're still enjoying that beautiful segue that Che did there into our five-a-side thing. So basically, we asked you to name your all-time Wrexham, Craggy Island, all priests, five-a-side team. Well, if you could pick 5 Wrexham players that you've seen play and put them into a five-a-side team, who would they be? It was your idea, Che. It's a magnificent, beautiful idea, and we've had some absolutely fantastic responses. So, well, do you want to go through your ideas first, perhaps, of what your team would be? Well, before we do, is there a philosophy behind this? Is there an approach you think a five-a-side team have to take?
Yeah, I try to get more, say, technically gifted players in. Some that are skillful, and mainly ones that I really enjoy watching, because I think the ones who bring me happiness is the ones I put in, really. Happiness watching Wrexham is the ones I brought in.
Absolutely. Actually, maybe, shall I give you the ones that have come in first? Because maybe that's the best way to do this. Oops, beg your pardon. So I'll give you some examples. So Andy Davis, I like this, said Marriott, Hardy, Ward, Connolly, Watkin. I reckon there's a song in there as well.
Yeah. That's a good team.
I like Hardy as a defender is an interesting call. I like it because maybe in a five-a-side team, you want, you don't, there's not much use for the guy who's good in the air, is there, necessarily? Not that Hardy wasn't, but a solid fullback like him who could really tackle and defend and was good on the ball is the sort of player you probably want in a five-a-side team.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I'll name one off, and another one, Gez Rogers. He sent me one in. He said Ben Foster, Brian Kerry, Darren Ferguson, Carlos Edwards, and Carl Conley.
Nice.
It's a well-balanced team, isn't it?
The trouble is getting the ball off Carl Conley, isn't it?
Yeah.
You give it to Carl, and then we can all sit back and watch him dribble at people. How about Matty Webber 88 on Twitter? He also went for Foster. Well, actually, it's quite a similar team. Foster, Darren Ferguson, Carlos Edwards, Mark Jones, and Lee Trundle. I think it's fair to say that's the Techers team. And he said skills, flair, spectacular goals, and a top-class keeper. Can't argue with that.
Can't argue with that at all.
Foster would. I got to say Foster would fill the goal, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He'd be a cracking keeper as well. Yeah. Sorry, go on, your mum.
My mum's team, heavily. She's been a Wrexham fan for years now. Her team was quite defensive, really, for a five-a-side, but she's got Miebe, Dennis Lawrence, Manny Smith, Darren Ferguson, and Juan Ugarte. So that's a very. I think that's just her favourite players.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Oh,
yeah.
That's it. I've got a few similarities with that team. I've got to say, hey, interesting that, isn't it? The team I read out before was sort of the opposite in that it had no defender. So, I mean, does that matter in five-a-side? I've got to be honest and say I've also gone on the defenderless approach to an extent. If you in five-a-side, you just want technical players to move the ball about, because that team that Matty Webber said, Ferguson, Carlos, Mark Jones, and Lee Trundle, a lot of technique in there. Or if you can tackle, no one's going to turn up against you.
Well, true. I heavily side. I wouldn't fancy getting past Smith, and then you'd have to get past Miebe in goal, who would cover the whole goal.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be very hard to score past that team. Then you'd have Ferguson and Ugarte just to play the rest of the game to do the football side. So good sides, John.
Long as it's an away five-a-side game.
Yeah.
I've got one here from Dickie. Marriott, Carlos, Connolly, Trundle, and here's a name we haven't had yet, Kevin Russell. That's a good call. Yeah. Kevin Russell's an interesting one because he sort of has two careers. I mean, he has two spells with us, and he is a completely different player when he comes back. So when he's first with us, he's a little super quick striker who's a brilliant finisher. And both seasons he gets around 20 goals. A magnificent striker. Never going to stay with us. He just couldn't. He had to go to a higher level. And he had hair, to an extent. And when he came back, at the end of his spell with us, he had an injury which just affected his pace. And when he came back, he was a midfielder and didn't have the pace anymore. But he was a class midfielder, attacking midfielder. He played up front sometimes, but he didn't have that pace anymore. But his intelligence on the ball and his intelligence reading the game was just superb. And I can say that not just watching him, but because I had him as my co-commentator once, and it was just like going to school. It was just brilliant. He just broke the game down, and I was just sitting there learning from him. It was just fantastic to listen to. He's got good technique and intelligence. He'd be a great five-a-side player, wouldn't he? I think. Oh yeah, definitely. I think intelligence is and ability is very important in five-a-side. Brother Bill Long, his team was Miebe, Lawrence. There's two in his team that's not been talked about yet. Dean Keats, Darren Ferguson, and Louis Moult up front. Oh, it's a tasty side.
Yeah, I think Ferguson and Lawrence seem to be in a lot of people's teams, don't they?
Yeah. It's interesting. Moult, I mean, he'd be a fine player at that level. His finishing is so good, and Keats as well. I got to admit, I had an either or with Keats and one other player in my team, and I went for the other one, but it was kind of toss of a coin, to be honest. But yeah, that'd be a side that could do something, I think, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I've got
definitely.
Owen Bradley has gone a really interesting, maybe more than anyone else, sort of mixture of the eras. I mean, that's the next two I've got. Maybe I like that. Ben Foster in goal, Neil Taylor, Carlos Edwards, Mickey Thomas, and Carl Connolly. Mickey Thomas, I mean, just never stop running. So that would be valuable, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Taylor as well. I mean, a good technical player.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't argue with any of these sides so far, can you?
That team has got so many good left feet in it. Taylor, Thomas, Connolly.
Oh, great. I've also had the word with Phil, who owns King Street Coffee in town. Huge Wrexham fan. I bought a coffee off him this morning. I thought I'd ask him for his five-a-side team. His is very attacking. He's gone Andy Marriott in goal, Neil Taylor, Hector Sam, Lee Trundle, and Andy Morale.
Oh, Morale and Sam are names we haven't heard really, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sam wriggling around and in tight spaces. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I like that.
Now we get on to the big ones, our five-a-side team.
Well, hang on, I got a couple more here.
Well, have you got one more? Have you got a couple more?
I've got a couple. John O'Devis.
Popular response then.
Oh yeah. John O'Devis has given us reasons, and he's also gone for Morel. But he says now he is an interesting one as a keeper. This is I like this sort of specialist thing. This is like Holland's bringing Tim Krul on for penalties. In goal, Christian Dibble, because he saves penalties, and you get quite a few penalties in five-a-side. Nice. Yeah. Then defending, he's got Joey and Mark Crichton. Oh God, I don't want to play against this team. You're going to get smashed into a wall against this team. He says grit and muscle. He says, I remember a story about Joey having teeth in his head, which I think I've mentioned this before on Dragonheart. I'm not sure. The classic story of Joey when he played for Liverpool. I mean, Joey tells his tales. I'm sure quite a lot are exaggerated, but that's the beauty of Joey. He's a wonderful storyteller. That he was playing for Liverpool at Middlesbrough, and there was a fight. So a Middlesbrough player, I think, had gone in on Ray Clemens. Yeah, the goalkeeper. He went down low, and Middlesbrough player got in late and kicked him. And so there's a big fight in the 6-yard box. And Joey thought, all right, I'm gonna make him pay for that. He shouldn't kick our keeper. And he thought, the ref will never be able to see me. There's so many people all milling around. So he went up to the lad who kicked the keeper, and he butted him in the mouth. And the referee, when he'd sorted out the fighting, called Joey over and sent him off. And Joey says, why? And he said, you butted that lad in the mouth. And he said, oh, how do you know? And he said, you still got his teeth in your head. Beauty, that. And then the other, now here are Morel, and here's a player, Dom Vos.
Oh, yeah.
There's a guy who'd operate it. And he said skills with a Z, because you need that sort of thing, and goals. And Mozart also does the tactical stuff. I like that team.
Wow. It's like a nasty team, isn't it, to play against? Yeah, I like that team.
Straight down the middle, terror and beauty. We also got Johnny Edwards, who said Andy Marriott, Dennis Lawrence, Peter Ward. Yeah, that's a good player. Again, good technical player. Lee Trundle and Carl Connolly. Peter Howell replied to that and just saying, you've got to have Mickey Thomas in there somewhere. Somebody had that. Owen Thornley. Hang on, did Owen have him before? No, I'm getting mixed up. Owen Thornley. Now then, this is an interesting one, yes. The goalkeeper's an interesting call. And again, like Christian Dibble, a specialist, Cameron Belford, just for his passing. So you can keep the ball moving. Interesting point, that. Curtis Obeng in defence with Moke. I always liked Adriano Moke. I was a real fan of his. And Vos in midfield. And then Molt up front. Quick attacking passing team, perfect for five-a-side. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Good thinking.
I like that team. Yeah.
Marcus Thomas, Marriott, Carey, Brian Hughes, Very technical player, very smooth on the ball. Connolly and Trundle. Steve H, Andy Marius, Phil Hardy, Peter Ward. Here, amazing that no one's come up with this person. Gary Bennett. And now here's an interesting call, because I'm not sure which one he means. I think I do know which one he means. Mike Williams. Now, I'm assuming he doesn't mean Mike Williams, Mark Williams' brother. I like Mike Williams, by the way. He's a good player he was. But I think he means Mike Williams from the 80s, who I think, at the early 90s, or I've mentioned in passing before, was a centre-back that we got from Chester and was a genuine class act, a wonderful centre-back. But he had terrible, terrible problems of injuries and had to retire in the end. And it was a great shame, because I tell you that he would have been playing at a much higher level had it not been for the fact that he broke down a number of times. So it's a shame. But yeah, that's a lovely call. Very good on the ball. You think in the 80s and 90s, centre-backs weren't good on the ball, but he was. So that's a good call. And the last one, Ray Thomas. Now, Ray, I salute you. You've gone old school. To the extent that even an old codger like me, I only saw one of these players play, but I am aware of their excellence. So Kevin Keelan in goal. I'll say that I did see him play at the very end of his career for Norwich. He's a Norwich legend, but he actually started off with us. He was a very agile goalkeeper, played most of his career, let's say, top level. Eddie May, he was a club legend, captain, leader, huge centre-back, scored goals as well. Ian Moyer, who we had a special interview with, a really skillful winger that people who saw him play absolutely loved. Sammy McMillan, who was a sort of inside forward midfielder, who was, again, a good player, came from Man United. And the one I did see play, albeit not for long, because he left quite soon after I started watching Wrexham, I don't think those two things were linked, was Bobby Shinton. He was a classic goal-scoring winger / striker. So there's some authentic players at that. And as we said earlier, they were playing at, Division 3, Division 2 level. So it's reasonable to argue that they may actually be better players than a lot of the ones that we've seen in a lot of ways. So quality that. But how about your team?
I really enjoyed all those teams. I really enjoyed listening to all those teams. I think most teams were very different, weren't they? I really enjoyed that. Listening to the different types of combinations that fans love in different types of players. But here's my team. Should I be my team first and your team?
Say again?
Or should we be player by player? Should be my team first and your team? Or
I don't mind. I'll do mine if you want. I forgot, man.
I'll be my team first.
Yeah.
I don't think he's the best goalkeeper I've seen while I'm here, but I've been watching Wrexham. But I think the current team we've got now doesn't get enough love, I don't think. So I think we're a good solid side. So I'm going to put Leighton in goal, because I think he's Mr. Reliable. And he's probably been, you could argue he was as good as maybe and Maxwell in the conference era too. Those three keepers are the best keepers we've had in this stretch of being in the conference. Yeah, Mr. Reliable, you can't knock Rob Leighton, can you?
Absolutely, yeah. And am I being stupid in saying he's not the massive goalkeeper, and that might be a good thing? You're getting down to low shots in five-a-side.
Yeah, I just really like him as well. I think he's a class act. So defender. Now I've not gone for your centre half. I've gone for Carlos Edwards for obvious reasons. He could defend. He could go forward. He was very skillful, good on the ball, fast. Everything you want out of a five-a-side defender. Centre midfield. I've gone Mark Jones, who hasn't been mentioned yet. Who I would argue, personally, probably the most technically gifted Wrexham player I've seen in the Wrexham shares. I don't know whether you could disagree with me. In my time of watching Wrexham, I think technically probably one of the best I've ever seen. And then up front, Trundle and Morel. It has to be them two, doesn't it? I think they're like peanut butter and jelly. Them two. I think Trundle at five-a-side is how technically gifted he was and how skillful he was of being valuable, and the way Morel could find the net and his work rate and his tactical nous. Perfect for a five-a-side team.
Yeah, they got that link already as well. Trundle's a very popular call, isn't he? Like I said, he can operate in small spaces. He'd be He'd be very tasty. That's a good side, that, Chay. I'm telling you.
Thank you.
You know, that's quality, that. I mean, obviously mine will beat you, but, you know, it's good. we need to get some sort of computer simulation going to see which team win. Oh, my word. I'm starting to seriously think about this now. I like Mark Jones as well. That's a really good call. What a lovely player Mark Jones was. I've got a problem I have in that I named my team, but I sort of want to change it because I've heard so many wonderful arguments for players and examples I didn't think of. I'm going to stick to my guns, but my team, right, in goal, a keeper that no one's mentioned, although someone has mentioned his son, Andy Dibble. I just think Andy Dibble's going to be hard to get the ball past to the goal that small. You know, by the time he came to us, his athleticism wasn't at what it had been, but his intelligence, his control of the angles and things like that meant it was really hard to beat him. So I think Andy Dibble would be a proper big barrier in goal myself. And then I've agreed with Matty Webber, and I've gone the attacking route. My logic, quite simply, is that I don't reckon you necessarily need an out-and-out defender. You know, a decent all-round player can tackle, can stop people. As you'll see, I've got tacklers, and that's what you really need rather than a sort of centre-back as such. So I've gone, and this is the one I pondered, Dean Keats. Now, a toss of a coin, I thought, let's get modern. Jay Harris, because Jay can tackle, he can pass, and when there's that lad who's, you know, sort of giving your mate a kick that the referee hasn't noticed, he'll make sure he gets sorted out when the referee doesn't notice. So I reckon Jay would be a big presence in the five-a-side hall, I think. Also, another midfielder who can pass and tackle, Darren Ferguson. I just think, like you're saying, technique. Well, he's going to be
popular choice.
Very
popular choice.
And then two, right, one's definitely not been named. The other one, I can't remember if he's been named. He has been, but not much. Right, the one that has been named from the 70s, I've gone Graham Whittle. Now, Graham Whittle was a midfielder or striker, playing really up front in the sort of great 77, 78 team. The reason I've gone for him is that he had an absolutely phenomenal shot on him. He's a very good player, but he could nail a shot from distance. Now, that's handy. If you're playing against a good team with a good keeper, being able to catch him out by absolutely nailing it in the corner from distance when he's not expecting the shot is useful. And if you're close in and you nail it like that, good luck saving it. You know, so I think Whittle, good player, but also that powerful shot would be useful. And then my striker, I've gone Juan Ugarte. Just thinking, a little fella who hangs around the edge of the area, who finds a little bits of space, sudden little acceleration, and then someone like Ferguson Harris plays him in, and before you know it, pop, first touch, bang, bottom corner, and Ugarte scores. So that's my.
As long as it's not a leisure centre in Wrexham that he's playing in, as long as it's a leisure centre in Hartlepool or Oldham.
It's got to be. Exactly right. Yeah. We refuse to play at home on the grounds that might incriminate us. But I mean, I was thinking, is an obscure one in some ways. One of the best, you said about technical players, one of the very best technical players I ever saw for Wrexham was Mark Wilson, who was a midfielder on loan from Man United in the late 90s. So he had about half a season with us. We just missed out on the playoffs. But he also played in a team that won the first Welsh Premier Cup. Oh, he was a class player. Oh, he was beautiful to watch. He had... you know, when you, and that's going to sound stupid, this, so I apologize in advance, but sometimes you see somebody and you can just see their class without actually them having to do anything out of the ordinary. I remember seeing Fabregas playing for Arsenal as a sort of 17-year-old, and just the way he moved around the pitch, just that first touch, the way he received the ball, the way he glided over the pitch, you can just see this lad's class. And I know it sounds strange to use this comparison. I remember seeing a very young Stephen Hendry playing snooker and thinking the same. Just his sort of liquid movements, his smooth action just was different from everyone else. Just technically perfect. And Wilson was like that. I mean, Wilson was, this is when we were in, the old third division. Way too good for that. He was a really good player. And he just came in, and just the quality of his touch. He scored goals from midfield. His passing, his movement like Fabregas, sort of floating on the air almost. And the only Wrexham player apart from him I can recall that really made me feel that was Brian Hughes. His smooth movements up and down the pitch. Just that there's no effort in keeping the ball in control near you. You're at one with the ball. Lovely player. He'd be unbelievable in his five-a-side team.
That type of football is someone who's just obviously so naturally gifted at football. And those sort of gliders, you can't teach that technique, can you? You can't teach someone to be that good at football technically. So that's a brilliant shout. That's an absolute brilliant shout.
He was a lovely player, he was. I'll tell you what. And it was a shame because obviously we were never going to keep him. There was no way. He was close to the first team at United. So that's the difference, isn't it? That now things are set up differently. You've got a youth academy in the first team or something separate in the Premier League. And you get youth players generally coming in on loan or unwanted players coming in on loan. And then by the time you get to our level, it really is youth players. But in those days, you wouldn't have that sort of setup, and your reserve team was quite close to the first team in the top division. And Wilson was fairly close to United. So I did play first team games for United, and then they sold him to Middlesbrough, and he did well for Middlesbrough, but didn't stay there all that long. And it's so strange. He sort of had a bit of a nomadic sort of middle of the Football League career, which he was better than that. I don't think it was anything to do with attitude or anything like that. I just for some reason, things didn't quite work out like that. He went to FC Dallas for a bit. Quality player. But, oh, my gosh, if we'd have kept him, which we never were going to keep him. He was too good for us. United wanted him back. But, if we had kept him, my word, that would have been something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe an alternative five-a-side for me would be Gavin Ward in goal, Silvio Span, Sufo. Who else would be a crazy one to put in? Malango.
Oh,
hello. And who else?
Churro Sandman.
There we go. There's a crazy five-a-side team.
Armand One. That'd be fun. Sufo would be great because he would just stand in the middle of the pitch and dictate play.
Junior and Tani. Another funny one.
That'd be interesting. You didn't have Miyabi in goal for that, did you? They seemed remarkably on a different wavelength, considering the fact that they were sort of expected to work well together. Although I think that was just a lazy, they're both from Cameroon, they'll link up well together. Just like any two Welsh people would be good at playing football together. And
I'd like to mention some players from the current squad as well.
Yeah.
I think Reece Johnson would be fantastic in a five-a-side team. Yeah. I think Jamie Record would be as well. Harris, you've mentioned him. Diorangus, Kwame Thomas, I think they'd all be fantastic at five-a-side too.
Well, I'd be worried for Reece Johnson because there's a wall at the end of the pitch. And he'll just be flying down the wing, won't be able to stop himself. But I'll tell you that the current player that sticks in my head, and I was really, this is the person, apart from that Harris Keats tossed the coin, I was seriously tempted to put in and change my team. It's Paul Rutherford. Imagine Paul Rutherford playing five-a-side with him. It'd be a nightmare if you're against him, and a dream if you're playing with him. Imagine the other side got the ball. You got a player running at you. It's okay, because Rutherford will be right next to you. And then they play it across the other side of the pitch. The lad on the other side, he'll be okay, because Rutherford's down right next to him, because he just can't stop running. He's got such energy. And he'd just be absolutely everywhere on that pitch throughout the whole game. Everyone else would be on their knees. And he'd be like, I've done my warm-up now. When does the game start? He'd just be everywhere. So I was tempted to throw him into the team just because, my God, it'd be like having an extra player.
Oh, yeah. That's another good shout. Honestly, there's so many you could put in, isn't there?
It's a great one, that, man.
Yeah. Thanks to Jamie Carragher's podcast for giving me the idea.
Oh, no! You're going to get sued now. We're going to slip it under the radar, and now you've exposed it. Oh, shocking.
What? Well, I'm sure he's listening, and I hope he enjoyed. I wonder what his five-a-side Wrexham team.
Well, he'd just dream of a team of Carragers, wouldn't he?
Oh well, yeah.
Hey, not bad.
Brilliant.
Hang on. I'm getting a word from a lawyer that we need to stop the podcast now before we say anything else about Jamie Carragher. So we'll try and keep him sweet by ending the show with a fellow Scouse five-a-side legend. But before we do that, Chay, thank you so much for getting me sued and for joining me. Brilliant, as always. And we'll sign out, as we always do, with Jamie Carragher tribute act, Jay Harris, and his Hollywood send-off.
This is Jay Harris, and you're listening to Dragonheart Radio.
Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe as well so you don't miss out on any of our content, and click the bell to get notifications.